So I'll go ahead as I usually do and just thank everybody for coming. We really appreciate your commitment to your dogs and to being better dog enthusiasts and wanting to soak up all of this valuable information from See Spot Behave. We have Debbie Puckett and Diane Smith, who are our gurus, our dog training gurus. And so I'm going to turn it over to them and let them introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their background, and then we'll get into the meat of the program.
Nice. Well, I'm going to change slides. I'm Debbie Puckett, and let me do it.
Uh-oh.
No, it's just sleeping. There we go. It just took a little snooze. Okay, here we are. So I'm Debbie, and Diane is on the call too. She waved at you a second ago. We work together. Diane founded See Spot Behave, and she'll tell you a little bit about her. And I am the psychology, I have to say that differently, behavior nerd. And my background is in psychology, as well as putting together all of the pieces and understanding of what's going on in dog behavior. So I have several certifications on that. And I just basically like to nerd out on that kind of stuff. I'm trauma informed. I work with dogs that have had some type of fear background or aggression background. And I have a new certification this week. It's called the Family Dog Mediator certification. It took me 2 years to get, and it is specifically for helping pet and family dogs work into and becoming that companion you want from trauma. So you take a dog that has a trauma past and helping them become a good family member. So it's a neat certification. And so that's our base. We're fear-free. We are positive. We work with dogs on their emotional level, and we never use force. Diane, you're on.
My turn. So I am the lead trainer and also owner of See Spot Behave. I started it in California over 15 years ago because I felt there was a niche needed to be filled by working with pets and their pet parents in home environments and in outdoor environments, and how we now have dogs in our world, and really working on helping people understand their dogs and how to have them in their family environment in a way that makes everybody happy. So I love being out and about, love doing all the stuff with dogs, and love working with people. So that's how I got started, and now doing it here.
From California to Texas. Huh.
I
No
know.
one else has done that.
Nobody else.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
Sorry about the quick driving. It just is so sensitive. It just flashed right past you. But I want to go back to the beginning here. The theme or the topic for tonight is safe holidays. And I didn't do a whole lot on Halloween because, and you'll see it in our theme, you kind of have to do a lot of preparation to set up for Halloween. And so we are going to talk about it as we go, since Halloween is coming up tomorrow? Friday, that's right. It's odd thing. Yeah.
I know.
No candy for me, I don't care. But it's coming up, and what we'll talk about as we go will apply to Halloween. And we'll talk a little bit when we talk about taking dogs out on walks, a little bit more specifically about Halloween. But what our purpose here is to help you plan out way in advance the issues that might come up during your holiday celebrations. And so I didn't choose winter themes because we're in Texas and we see snow once every bajillion years. And I thought this would probably take us through the whole season. So all of this is evidence-based. We go back and we look at research, and we look at the way behavior is approached from a scientific perspective. So when we're putting this stuff together, we don't bring in myths and rumors, and we don't bring in, the things that are just out there on the internet. We really do ground it in the scientific research behind what's going on for dogs. And so I'll bring in some of the myths as we're talking about. So here's our agenda for tonight. And you can zoom in on this. It basically is, we're going to go through the environment and help you deal with making your environment safe. Then we're going to go into the social part of the holidays, and that is bringing guests into your home and family members into your home. Then we'll deal with the stress your dog goes under with that and helping your dog cope with that stress. Then we'll address medical issues, and how to make sure that you're prepared if there is an emergency and what to do in the event of an emergency. So you'll end up with a checklist. You'll end up with, quick things that you can do. And if you look in the chat, I already uploaded a link to a handout that has the tables, that have all the advice that's in this slideshow. So I know that I have gotten the handouts a little bit later out to you. I wanted you to have this one. So if you look in the chat, I put a link at the very top. If it's not there, we'll put it in again at the end, and you can just link to it, and you can just download that sheet. Has all of the advice in it for you. I think it's important that you walk away with this as soon as possible so you can plan your holidays. Okay, here we go. Okay. We love holidays. I'm not certain your dogs do, to be honest. I'm not certain dogs love holidays. I'm not certain they love the costumes, the ones you put on them, the ones that we wear. I think they love the food if they were allowed to get to it. I'm not certain they even love the tree in the house, because that sure is confusing. And a lot of male dogs are like, wait, now I can't pee on that thing. Why not? There's a lot of things that we do that they're just like, what? And so holidays are incredibly stressful for dogs, because all the rules in the house change, what they can and can't do, what rooms they can access, what they can sit on. And then all of a sudden there's new people in the house. So we really have to think about the fact that we're asking a lot of our dogs in this time period, and that when we're stretching their understanding of their home, that we might be able to prepare them better. And if they have heads up and a place to go, they could actually enjoy their holidays much more. And so overall, what I wanted to bring up is that, the statistics that vets put out about the holidays paint a very interesting picture. If you look at this box in the statistics, vet visits go up by 30% during the holidays. Imagine that. Also, that dogs show stress behaviors, 68% more in stress behaviors. That's the panting, whining, things like shredding stuff, stealing things, urinating on stuff when they didn't used to, barking when they hadn't before. And then on top of that, look at this one, 94% more cases of chocolate poisoning, because we do put things out for our guests, or we put things in stockings, or we have them out and the dogs get into them. So veterinarians don't love the holidays either. In fact, there are lots of them that would say that, man, this is a really tough time on them, because the holidays are just trap after trap for your dog. Now, why are they stressful? Dogs are creatures of routine. If you've seen the other webinars, we've talked about this a lot. They love structure. They love routine. They like to be able to predict their day. And so when we start doing little things differently, they're a little worried about them. And then when you get into the unusual sounds like Christmas music all the time, or maybe a loud music like fireworks, or get into loud parties, even the football parties that come at this time of season where people are going, yay, and jumping up and down. I have a case right now that on the last weekend, when the Cowboys lost, somebody jumped up and screamed at the end of that game, and his dog attacked him in the face.
Oh, no.
And because the dog perceived that jump and scream as a threat to the mom in the house, because she was sitting next to him. So there are a lot more bites because of loud, raucous parties, things like that. So these things could be avoided. Like if they knew their dog was defensive, this family could have put the dog away. They didn't know it was a new dog. So now they're like, dog's going to stay elsewhere when we scream about football. So dog doesn't get to watch football games. So there's just some things that we know are behind the stress. But really, if we're prepared, dogs can kind of sail through it. Of course, lots of Goldens are like, oh, there's a party, there are people, I'm happy. And they're going to wiggle the way through it. However, we have Goldens that come from backgrounds where loud noises or unfamiliar backgrounds might really push them. And we have to be aware that they're going to have difficulty. So here are the signs of stress, and you're going to get this chart in the handout. And you know your dog, but I want you to really be aware that when they're crossing into yellow, when we talk about this, that's really the time to have your dog moved away from the source of stress. Don't wait till your dog is in the red zone to help them out and to get them out of the exciting space. So we know the dog is coping well if there's snoozing, if they're over on their bed, if they're being kind of playful and greeting people, if they're still listening to you, and if they're relaxed and just kind of watching what's happening. What I think is the first sign of stress for dogs is usually restlessness, walking around and trying to figure out what's going on in the party. And we often think that that is social, and more often than not, that's the dog starting to look for a place to kind of hide or a place to settle because they're worried. So you start seeing a dog panting. This says drooling. If they're drooling, I would put that in a red zone, really. Drooling is pretty concerning. And I kind of put it on 2 because drooling could be because you've got, your uncle is sitting on your couch with a plate of food. There's that kind of drooling too. But really the restlessness is mostly that yellow zone. And when they start doing that, they're telling you, I'm uncomfortable and I don't know where to settle. And that's the best time to take them to their spot and say, here's a quiet spot for you. Here's a Kong or a chew. Chill out, baby. And shut the door and give them a place to relax. You can bring them out a little bit later if they've relaxed, but just give them a break. When they get into the red zone, when they're whining, barking, destructive behavior, like they've snatched the thing off the table and they're starting to shred it, if they have growled at somebody or shown fear, they need to be taken out immediately. Diane and I have worked with people where the dog stayed in the party long after they growled at somebody. And that's way past time to remove the dog from the party. So these are just things I think when you would look at it, go, these are pretty obvious. But in the time when you're there with the dog, if you think of it beforehand, you've got a quick inventory, quick checklist in your brain of like, oh, my dog is restless. Let me just take him out. And especially if your dog is trying to hide, if they're looking for a place to settle, but it looks like they're trying to get it small, definitely give them an exit. Okay. Oh, there's my avatar. See, if I just do that, he shows up. He's like, there he is. Okay. Holiday decor, man, dogs like lights. They like to look at them. They do not like things that pop up and move and scream and squeal. And Halloween is the worst for that. And so if your neighborhood right now is full of those things that move and stuff, don't take your dog for a walk when they're plugged in and moving. Give your dog a break from those things. You could go during the day and let them get a chance to sniff them, look at them when they're not moving. You could go and just stand back once they're, blown up and let them watch them. But really assume that is going to freak your dog out because they do not know what it is. So holiday decor, I would say if you interviewed a whole bunch of dogs, they would say that's the worst, man. They would not like it at all. On that list of veterinarian, things that increase for vets, the 5th thing down was shock from electric wires. And that's puppies and young dogs chewing on the wires. So we've got decoration safety as the first box on here. So be sure you're doing what you can to make sure wires are up and out of the way, that things are plugged in properly and not partially, which can cause a shock, that, you've got the right things plugged into the right things. Outdoor lights are plugged in with the right setup. Things are covered completely. And that if your dog is showing interest in the electrical cords, you find a way to not only supervise that, but also start working with leave-its, start working with place, and then not only cover it up, but supervise when your dog is around. During the holiday, when we have a new dog, if I'm fostering, that dog is on a leash and is not available to be in the decorated space by themselves. That's a really good way to keep them out of the trouble there. I did have one dog that wanted to chew the musical instruments, and my partner loves those little musical instruments and they're fascinated by them. So it says on here to avoid them because the dogs are so fascinated and they'll try to bite them. Sometimes they'll be afraid of them. Things to lock away because they're toxic. Obviously chocolate. is something that dogs just should not get into. We had a Chihuahua that ate an entire bag of Dove, the dark
Oh.
chocolate Dove. We rushed her to the veterinarian. They did the activated charcoal and had her vomit. She was fine. We were lucky because she ate almost her weight in chocolate. It was a 2-pound bag and she was 3 pounds. Um, and then of course when we cleaned up the backyard, her poop sparkled for weeks. I was like, why? So make sure that stuff is locked away. And this was a sealed bag and it was up, and I don't know how she got into it. We had not actually put it in a cabinet. She just managed to get up to it. Alcoholic beverages, we mix them with things like milk and ice cream and things that taste good, and dogs will drink them, and they have their livers cannot detox their bodies from alcohol. And alcohol is extremely toxic to dogs, and it will poison them. So make sure that, if a guest's putting drinks down, the dog cannot sit there and drink them. And of course, teenagers are toxic to dogs in that sometimes they think it's funny to let the dog drink alcohol beverages. And so monitor that. Anything that has xylitol in it, or now the term is birch sugar, is extremely toxic to dogs. It is a neurotoxin, and it causes immediate paralysis. They are making peanut butter with xylitol, so watch that. Xylitol is a low-cal option. It's called birch sugar, but it's like an alcohol of birch sugar. And it's awful stuff. Bubble gum is one of the best places to find it. And dogs love the smell of bubble gum. And I've seen dogs go into guests' purses to pull out bubble gum boxes and chew the bubble gum because it smells good. So, guest purses, ask them to put them up like on a bed or a couch so the dogs can't go and rifle through the purses. Now, if they're going for money, that's your deal. But if you're going for the gum, don't let them have the gum.
We'll be having that class later this year.
Yeah, that class later, pickpocket class later this year.
How to teach your dog to pickpocket.
Right. And then I love this. It's on Pinterest and Instagram. People make their dogs little like Thanksgiving meals with all of the stuff on the plate and then give it to the dog. And almost always the vets are like, don't do that, because the richness of that food just makes them ill. You could give them a little bit of turkey, but don't give them the gravy. Don't give them the big wad of stuffing and mashed potatoes and all those other things. So keep them away from those rich foods, because you'll have a sick dog. So those are the toxic items. There is a list of toxic foods that'll come with this in your little handout that helps. We all know things like grapes and raisins, but sometimes people don't know, like onions and garlic are tough on dogs. Sometimes they don't know that even though tomatoes aren't truly toxic, they're hard on dogs. So don't give them tomatoes. And that in avocados, the darkest layer around the outside of an avocado that's still that darkish green is a neurotoxin for dogs. So don't give them avocado. You can give them the inside, but why risk it, right? So there's a list of foods not to give them, but really the best bet is just don't give them a bunch of this rich food too. What I would love to see is that if you're planning on having family over, is you create a safe zone for your dog. We've talked about this in multiple webinars about setting up a sanctuary. And so if you need help or don't have that information, we have a handout on creating a sanctuary and we can get you connected with that. But the gist of it is your dog needs a place to go where humans will not disturb them so they can take a break from all the socializing. And you need to get an agreement from all the humans, including the little ones, that if the dog is in their quiet zone, that nobody goes to pet them or play with them or take their toys or do any interaction with them when they're in that quiet space. So you need a space that's comfortable, that your dog likes to go to, that you could use a white noise or brown noise, or even if you don't want to get a noise machine, a box fan will make the same noise and cut down, that extra noise for dogs, and let them have a place where they can get away from the humans. Often, if you just put a baby gate where the dog can choose to go in, you'll find that they will retire from all the hubbub into their quiet space on their own. But you need to set that up 6 weeks ahead of your party and teach your dog that they can go there to get their own solitude. So this isn't something you set up the night before and hope your dog enjoys it. They need to know it's their space. I have on here desensitization tips. We'll talk about it several times, but what we mean by that is how to get your dog used to something. And this means that when you're putting something new in your house that might scare your dog, you want to take time to let them absorb the information, know that it's safe and it's okay, know that you're handling it. And so what you do is you introduce it to them slowly. So let's say it's a decoration that makes some noise. We always have these little Hallmark things that sing and dance. And so what you want to do is show it to them without it making noise. Give them some treats, let them sniff it, check it out. Then you turn it on. And if it has low settings, turn it on at a low setting so it doesn't freak them out. Let them get used to it, and then slowly introduce the higher settings if it has that. If it doesn't have that, introduce it at a distance and then bring it closer. It's the same idea as having different settings. Reward the dog's interest, but not fear or overly curious. Like, ooh, I'd like to have that. Like, just let them take a look at it, see it, and be calm about it. You really want them to go, huh, what is that? And then go, meh, don't care. And you really want that to happen with anything that is animated, because especially retrievers, if it's animated, it's probably a toy for them. More than likely, that's what they're going to think. So be sure if you have anything that's animated, give them a chance to check it out. But that's what we'll do when you desensitize for really anything coming into the home. Oh, by the way, let me go back to this. A quick safety. There we go. Sorry about that. Quick safety protocol. I've done this. I've asked you to do it before in other webinars. Go through your home as best you can at dog level once you've got your decorations up, and see if there's anything that you're like, ooh, they should not have access to that. Or, that's really, easy for them to steal that food or steal something off that table. And just double check that access. Ours was a coffee table that we had pushed up, and we thought this would be a great service space, but there was a corner. So the coffee table was on an unguarded corner. So the dog could literally go around the corner and pull stuff off the coffee table.
Yeah.
Not well planned. Okay. There we go. Sorry about the glitches. I know I slowed down there for a minute. Did you hear about everything? Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah,
so here's how you can get guests in the house with the dog actually enjoying the process. Here we go. I think the most important thing is your dog doesn't really need to meet all your guests. And so if you're thinking about having guests over, consider that the dog might be more interested in meeting them when all of the hubbub is slowed down. They don't need to meet the guests when everybody's coming in and it's a big deal, or they don't need to escort the guests out at the end of the party. But maybe they could come out of their comfort zone and meet people in the middle when things have kind of settled down. Have I frozen on you guys?
You're frozen, but your voice is still going.
Okay, good. All right. So on this slide, I have a couple things. Doorbell anxiety. I think if your dog is like mine, doorbells make them crazy. Practice having the door ring, even if you just go and ring the bell and offer treats, so that they learn that the ringing bell is not a big deal. But also, if you have a dog that already knows the place command, reinforce that command that, hey, if I ring the bell, you go to place, and teach them to do that. You may need a trainer to help you with that if your dog hasn't already learned that. You can start several weeks ahead of time and get to the point where your dog literally goes to their place instead of going to the door when the doorbell goes off. If that doesn't work and you want to make a really good shortcut, set up a baby gate, and when the doorbell goes off, escort your dog to behind the baby gate, and then go answer the door. That way your guests can come in without meeting a dog that's going to jump on them and be overexcited. The safest way to meet a guest is either on leash or behind some type of barrier. So that's the structured meet and greet. Ask your guests to come in and really ignore the dog. Now, not rudely so, but not high pitched. Oh my God, it's the dog. I mean, that's just going to send the dog. And so please ignore the dog. Please don't make eye contact. Please just walk past. And then your dog will hopefully relax. And then once they're relaxed, your guests can meet the dog. So ask them to pretend the dog is something they can just pass by, just like a piece of furniture. And then once everything is calm, then they can go through the protocol of meeting the dog. When your dog is calm, even if it's right at the very beginning, be sure to recognize that calm and reward it. Capture it every time so that they know that's the expectation of them. So if you've answered the door, you've got your dog on a leash, and you're inviting your guests in, and your dog, for the very first time ever, it's a miracle, has not gotten excited and jumped, pause and reward your dog. Like, make sure he knows they did it right, and set that up. Also, instead of baby gates, you can use something called tethering. In a house I had before, we used eye bolts that we screwed into the baseboard and attached the leash to it, and then put a nice dog bed and toys, and the dog stayed on that when the guests came in, so that he could see the guests coming in, but not come and rush the door. So you can use a baby gate to keep the dog away. You can have your dog on a leash, or you can have your dog tethered. All of those things help your guests get in the door without being, love mauled by your dog, and also give the dog a chance to feel like the guests are coming in a way that they don't have to do any protection. The visitor protocol here in the middle is probably the easiest to follow of all the stuff that's on there. And it says, before your guests come, prepare your dog with exercise. So I know you're going to be running around, cleaning the house, make sure the food is right, table is set, and the candles are lit, and everything is perfect. And somebody in your household needs to be exercising the dog so that when the guests arrive, the dog is not wound up, that they've kind of burnt their energy. So put that on the list of your planning. Make it as important as those other things. Once you're all set to go and the guests are beginning to come, go through that second part of putting them on the leash or behind the barrier or on the station. Have the guests, when they arrive, you stop them and brief them on, here's how I'd like you to come into the house so that it is smooth with my dog. Here's some treats to toss, however you're going to do it. Then have them come in where the dog can calmly observe what's going on. Even if they're excited, they can stay back behind the gate or be on the bed. And you reward the dog with increased freedom as they are calm. So you might take them from behind the gate to being on the leash with you. You might take them off the station to being on the leash with you. And then as they are calmer, then you might decide to take them off the leash. So that's the process. Most dogs are right there at the door when the guests come in, and it starts game on right there. So if you can ease them through the process, your guests will appreciate it, and really your dog will too. I don't recommend just sticking your dog behind the glass door where they can see everybody coming and letting your dogs jump up and down and get really, really hyped behind that door. And then you go and just open the door and let the dogs come in like a wrecking ball. Make sure that they're on leash and that they're calm before you allow them in. Okay. This is a quick overview of creating the safe space that we've talked about before, the sanctuary or the haven for your dog. Consider having your dog in a space outside of where the party is going to be, or where they're unwrapping the gifts is going to be, where the family is gathering, or where you're watching football. Have them in a space that they actually really enjoy being in. It could be your bedroom. It could be your office. And it could be a space that they tend to go and curl up on their own, but it's away from the party area. You set up something soft and cozy. You can set up an alternative noise machine or soft music, and you should dim the lights and make it so the dog cannot watch out the window. So if he's watching out the window, he's not actually being calm. He's doing TV. Actually, he's monitoring. In that space, make sure you have water, some toys, a nice blanket, and really anything with your scent on it. If you have a t-shirt that you can wear that you put in there, it smells like you, so it's comforting, do that. If you can include treats or puzzle toys, do that. Something that your dog can do. If you have to do 2 dogs and your dogs are likely to be fussy with each other, have them crated so you don't end up with grumpy dogs in the one room. So you end up with, howling, scratching, barking, whatever's going on behind the door. Be sure that you're working on that, the dogs enjoying that space weeks before your event. At the very least, 1 week before. But really, honestly, a month before would set you up for so much ease. If you go in with a book and just read in that space so that they end up relaxing and chilling out, you're teaching them to be really relaxed in that space. That feeling will happen when you're not in there as well. So don't go into that space to do your exercise or to talk on the phone or to do something that's high energy, because they won't learn to relax. Wherever their space is, should be low-key space for you too. Okay. And you can use it when you're prepping the meal. You can use it when you have guests coming over. You can use it just to have your dogs get used to it. And you can use it when there's fireworks happening or you've got neighbors that are loud, anything to practice. What's not on this list that we've talked about before are things like the adaptable diffusers that you can put in to help them relax. Lavender scent is excellent to help them relax. Those are really good. And if your dog is a dog that needs medication because they're anxious, go ahead and practice once or twice before the party, having them have their medication in that space as well. So they're not, when they do have their medication, they're like, now this is different. Okay, so make sure they have it 1 or 2 times before that. Okay. Here's your test. Should your dog join the party? Depends on the dog. Really does. How to know if your dog should be there really should be up to, 1, are your guests going to be comfortable with the dog? And 2, is your dog going to be comfortable with the guests? One weird kind of variable that happens is if your guests are going to bring their own dogs. So make sure that communication is happening. So like if you know somebody tends to bring their dog, communicate whether or not you would like them to, so that you have that handled. Because this whole thing I've just talked about changes dramatically if they bring their own dog, because now your dog is having to cope with a dog in their space. And if that happens, my recommendation is that your dog spends their time in their sanctuary and not having to monitor that person's dog, and that you ask that person to have their dog on leash. That really is the best way to do it. So how do you know? So if your dog is relaxed and happy and enjoying people and seeking interaction, but not pestering, they're eating normally, and they're able to relax, they're able to lie down and watch, then your dog should be at the party. They should go to their sanctuary if they're hiding, if they're restless, if they can't eat, if they're starting to show the whale eye, if they're trying to find a way out, outside or out the front door, they should go to their sanctuary. And they should absolutely have no contact whatsoever if they're showing distress. Okay. If they have growled, if they had snapped, if they have barked, if they have urinated on anyone or anything, they need to be absolutely quarantined. And when you have 2 dogs in a house, the resident dog and the guest dog are more than likely to have conflict in tight spaces. So be certain that your dog and that dog don't end up in like the narrow spot of the kitchen together, or between the coffee table and the couch together, because those narrow, tight spaces are going to be the places they end up getting upset and fighting in. So that's a monitoring space.
Can I add one thing, Debbie?
Please do.
Okay. All of this are true. But I think a lot of times people also think, my dog's not showing signs of fear, but excess excitement also can be problematic.
Absolutely.
So even though your dog seems really joyful when people come over, the thing is, a lot of times that reinforces all the crazy behavior that a lot of people go, yeah, I really don't want my dog to jump up on people. I really don't want my dog to, be between people's legs and all of that. So I think even in those situations, a lot of times it's better to ask your dog to go to a calm place versus trying to keep asking them to not do the behaviors that you may not necessarily want them to do. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. Because, when I mean relaxed body posture, that's what I mean, not overexcited. They aren't jumping around, but they're able to just chill out. Yeah. So success, minimal exposure, let your dog be around for a few minutes and then let them go to their space. Giving them high value treats during the party will minimize the chance they're going to try to steal food. And we're going to talk about stealing food in a second. Give somebody in your family the job of monitoring the dog, that their job is to watch what the dog is doing. Or if you have that friend that would really rather just pet your dog through the whole party, or give them that job. That's me. I would be the person at your party, just hanging out with the dog the whole time, or in the kitchen. Those are the two things I like to do. So assign that, hey, do me a favor, just keep an eye on the dog, just pet the dog. Great. And then keep your dog's regular feeding schedule so that they aren't hitting their hunger time right in the middle of your party. Feed them in their sanctuary space. Okay. Please do not force your dog to meet anybody. I just met with a couple that they would put their dogs in a downstay on their bed and have each guest come in and meet the dogs in their bedroom in a forced downstay as a way of introducing the dogs to the friends. So from the dog perspective, can you see I'm at a higher up, closer to people than I want to be. I'm forced to stay in this position, and strangers are coming into the most sacred part of the house. And I'm starting to get freaked out because they keep coming. More and more are coming. That's just so hard for dogs to manage. So do not ask your dog to meet anybody if they aren't interested in meeting. And if your dog is way overexcited to meet, like Diane said, also, they don't get a chance to meet people. Okay. The fireworks prep program. Yes, please start this now. Please start this now. You can do this by introducing your dog to recordings of loud noises, and you can do recordings of fireworks. Now, recordings of fireworks, there are scientists that say they're not anywhere near as scary to dogs because they don't carry the range of sound, but they do at least give them some idea. And so you can start with giving your dog access to that sound of a firework going off at a very low level, and feeding treats and being calm around it, and raise that volume over the course of 6 weeks to the point where it is that loud boom that happens, and your dog can manage. It just has to be a slow introduction where you are not worried about it and your dog is not worried about it, because it's the cue that you're turning this music on and in control of it is as important as the exposure. The timeline is something like this. 6 weeks out, you start with a little bit of exposure. At about 4 weeks, you're going to add something called counter conditioning. And that's when you start doing things like, hey, I'm going to have you do this toy or do some training or play with me while these sounds are going on. So your dog is experiencing positive things going on while the sounds are happening. Then about 2 weeks before fireworks, bring those up to realistic volumes while you're doing counter conditioning. And then the day of the event, go ahead and set up the calming aids and sanctuary. And the calming aids could be for your dog, the white noise. It could be Adaptal spray, could be Thunder shirt. It could be L-theanine chews. It could be prescription medication, and it could be every single one of those things. So if your dog is extremely sound phobic, it probably would be all of those things. And if it is that, then I would say you want to introduce those about 2 weeks before as well, and slowly get your dog used to getting a Thunder shirt on again, etc. One thing is, the good news is there's an 85% success rate of doing this kind of program 6 weeks out, which tells you if you do it about a week out, your success rate is going to be very low. Do this in very small bites, 5 to 10 minutes max. Okay. And keep the volume below where your dog is startling. Classical music is a great music to kind of mask sudden sounds. So if you're working on introducing fireworks, you can have 2 devices going. You can have one with the fireworks in the background and one running some low classical music, which they'll be hearing that night of. We'll send out some links. I think on the handout I have them too. There's some things like happy hoodies that we've mentioned before, which is like a snood for your dog that can mute sounds. There are headphones for dogs. There's some fancy stuff out there. So if your dog is especially noise phobic, get in touch with us. We can help you with that. Michelle, is your dog noise phobic? Is that who we talk? Is it yours?
I have, both my girls are petrified. I use Cilio with them, which really helps tremendously. The problem is it only lasts so long, and you got to give it enough in advance. And so, but it does really make a big difference for sure. But I bought the head things for July 4th. And that really helped. I had to get them used to it because they felt like, they acted like I put a ton of bricks on their head.
Yes. Yep. That's that desensitization. It's really important to give them some time. Yeah. So they do look at you like you're murdering them if you put them right on them. They're like, what have you done?
Take my head off.
But they're mighty cute. They look like seals in them. So it's cute.
Yes, exactly. But the brown noise, the head hoodies, and Cilio. And I'm hoping we'll get through this New Year's Eve. We'll see.
Yeah. Let's see. Texans do love our things that go boom.
I'm telling you, the dogs think the world is coming to an end. You guys are crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Oof, there we go. My internet is much slower tonight. Okay, here we go. So here's a list of some of the things that's going to be in your handout. And on this, it has stars on effectiveness. And this is why you stack them like Michelle did with her dogs. You don't need, no one thing aside from flat sedation is going to help your dog if they're noise phobic. And so, there's several things you can do. So the pheromone products, the diffuser is really good. And especially if you have your dog in a small space, they tend to actually help and work within 15 minutes. And you can actually just spray their bedding ahead of time too. I will say that the collars only really work on dogs where the collar can go right up against their skin and warm up. And so for your retrievers, don't get the collars. If you have a dog that has thick fur, the collars will not work. The comfort wraps like the Thunder shirt and the Happy hoodies do quite well, especially the pressure therapy seems to work with dogs that are phobic. The supplements, L-theanine is a precursor to serotonin, which helps dogs calm down. Melatonin helps them get sleepy. More and more folks, veterinarians are warning that CBD is so unregulated, they do not recommend CBD at this point unless it's a veterinarian grade that has been proven how much CBD is in it. So I don't recommend it unless you've talked to your vet about it and gotten a brand that they actually recommend. And the whole message here is stack stuff. Get as many stacked things that your dog can tolerate, and that'll defend against all those scary noises. If you need meds, or if you think your dog needs meds, we'll talk about your dog's, not yours. If your dog needs meds, your vet may offer these. These are the typical ones. And what's not on here is the cilia, which is interesting, but that is specifically for noise phobia, not for anxiety. So make a note, if your dog is noise phobic, Cilio is fantastic. But the meds for anxiety in general, trazodone is great for short term. It works quickly and lasts for about 2 hours. Gabapentin takes a little longer to kick in. It comes in for about 90 minutes. It comes in and lasts for about 4 hours. The alprazolam is actually Xanax. It comes on board in about an hour and lasts 4 to 6 hours. So these are very effective. When I see dogs on them, I think Xanax is probably the least effective of them because it has the most side effects, personally. So trazodone and gabapentin are the usual. If you are going to go with non-pharmaceuticals, L-theanine is the most effective. Melatonin is the next step down, even though they have the same amount of stars. Melatonin tends to be case specific. Some dogs just don't react to it, and CBD. So the reason why I have this here is you can see really the most effective for short-term use is going to be trazodone. And you want your vet to look at everything else your dog is taking and make sure that trazodone is the right choice. Because if your dog is on fluoxetine or other types of medications for anxiety, then the next best choice would be gabapentin. But these are the normal things you would see your vet offer. You want your vet to be working with you all the way out at that 6-week point, instead of calling a couple of days before New Year's, because there's going to be a line at that door and you're not going to be able to get in. And there's so many people asking for meds right before New Year's, and the vets just can't see everybody. So go ahead and start your plan and ask about medications way out when you're at the very beginning. And that gives you a chance also to try and see what works best for your dog. And that way you can trial them once or twice. And what you're looking for is that your dog is not so sedated they're loopy, or that they have lost, they're like for gabapentin, if it's too much, they can actually be ataxic, which means they, lose their balance. Or trazodone can actually have a reverse effect and make them irritable. So you want to test those things before you're relying on them. So have, 1 or 2 days where you have tested that. Always make sure that you know whether or not they need to have food before they have the medications, and make sure that you're going to get them lots of water. Gabapentin makes dogs extremely thirsty, and without it, they will get a headache. And so you can see dogs get grumpy after they have gabapentin if they don't have water. Okay. Counter surfing, kids, and guests that bring their dogs. Counter surfing's fun because we actually used a cartoon of a dog running off with the turkey for our advertising for this season, because it's been known to be done. We actually had a Shih Tzu here that we looked over, and he was standing on the dining table eating the turkey after he had placed his face in the mashed potatoes. So he had a face full of mashed potatoes. The mashed potatoes had dog face, so we weren't going to eat them. And then he had already eaten a good deal of the bitten part of the turkey. That was before I was a trainer. So one of the things that helped me go, I should do that. I should learn how not to have this happen again. Counter surfing is an unfortunate behavior because there are 2 ways to cure it. One is you put everything away, or you guard it and make sure the dog cannot have access, so the dog does not get rewarded. If they can't get rewarded, they won't do it. That's a lot of work. It's worth it because the dog doesn't get it. 2 you provide punishment that is so severe that they don't want the food. Now, I will never say that that's a good idea, because the severity of punishment would be painful, because I don't know a dog in this world that would look at a turkey and go, yeah, go ahead. I don't want that turkey. They are honestly not going to be able to go to look at that turkey and not try to take it if it's right there. So that means that we have people who do things like they prep their dog by using a shock collar, but they have to use an immense amount of shock, and they are really hurting their dogs. When actually the choice would be put the food where the dog can't get to it, or put the dog where they can't get in that space. So the true training for counter surfing is the dog cannot have access to the food, however you set that up. If that means your dog is in a separate room or outside or in a crate, or someone has the dog on a leash and is being monitored, that's the answer. Because for me, punishing the dog or scaring the dog or hurting the dog is not an answer. And so I stand on that one. I've had people ask us, can you train the dog to not counter surf? And my answer has always been, I'm sorry. In this case, the training is the human. In terms of counter surfing, the true training is human training, that the human has to manage the environment so the dog cannot counter surf. What do you think about that? It's frustrating. I know.
And somebody had asked that question, right, Michelle?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Do you happen to know if they're on the call right now or the video?
Yeah. Does anybody have a question about counter surfing?
Because it's a big one, I know. Anybody have dogs that counter surf?
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's one of the most common challenges that we see with our foster dogs, and it comes up a lot. I fortunately have never had a dog that counter surfs, but I mean, we've had dogs take things from a can of chocolate frosting to a chef's knife, like literally not kidding, this long off a counter.
Yeah.
And baby gates and management are the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they'll guard it too. Once they take it, they tend to be like, this is such an enormous prize. I'm not letting you have it back. So that also actually increases the resource guarding. Yeah.
It becomes, I get it. This time of year with the holidays, there's tons of more food out than normal. One thing that I do hear a lot of is a lot of people tell us, because we say baby gates. I must say baby gates 30 times in a week.
Yep.
But a lot of people will say, oh, we have an open floor plan. Our house isn't set up that way. I have gated off my entire backyard to have a pool built by buying baby gates on Amazon. And I mean, we had 3 months of, we bought 10, 16-foot gates.
Wow.
And we had to section off our whole backyard. So if I can gate off a backyard, you can gate off a kitchen, I promise.
Right. And there's also stationing. So if you can't baby gate, you can station. And you can also have somebody on the other, you can do a waist leash where the dog is attached to you. There are lots of other solutions, but yeah, there are baby gates. There are gates that can span a good distance, that are nice looking. They don't have to look like, they're from industrial area, but it can be done. And I've had lots of folks say, I have a big open plan, and I'm like, well, how about right there? And I'm like, oh yeah, that would work. Yeah. So we can help with that. But it is that. And also, it was Rocky's owner. I saw it was Mona.
Mona says Rocky's a huge counter surfer.
So Mona, how are you handling it with Rocky?
Mona, you're muted.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, can you see? This is going across my whole entire stove side of the kitchen. It goes all the way back there. I just brought it in. I just brought it in this week because because I was doing some baking or cooking finally for something. I mean, I've cooked with him here and everything, but I
Right.
was doing something a little bit more, and he was just being a pester and
Yep.
really getting his paws up on the counter, and I was terrified he was going to put it on the stove.
Sure.
And so I
Yeah. They don't know. They don't, they don't realize it's so high value. All that stuff is so high value for them that it is really hard for them to not go in the kitchen and go, yes.
Mhm.
That's
yeah,
yeah.
and it's just, my other dog, Birdie, got up on the counter one time and got a hold of a loaf of bread or something and some tortillas or whatever.
Yep.
But then after that, never again.
Oh, well, that's
I'm
great.
like,
Guess he went, tortillas weren't that great.
oh my God, how did that manage to happen? But Rocky is just horrible. I mean, and it doesn't help that his head is about 3 or 4 inches from the top of the counter either.
Yeah. Well,
You
that
know, he can
told
he
you
can just
stuff.
put his nose up there and see it,
Yeah. And here's the thing too, just advice to everyone. If you teach your dogs agility, do not leave step stools near your counter then, because even if they're not tall enough, they'll climb up on your countertops doing their agility thing. Oh, yeah.
Yep. And dogs will work in pairs too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tag team.
they will.
If I can throw one thing in too is, for my dogs in particular, they love getting in the kitchen and counter surfing too. I often will figure out other things for them to do. So my favorite is to toss things into the backyard. I'll scatter treats or something back there for them to sniff out. So I give them another job to do. So sometimes that helps as well, as just go, okay, you're bored, you're watching me do this, let's go do something else instead. So just another idea.
Right. And under the pro tips here, it says, whatever you do at the station, give them something high value so they don't feel like they've lost out.
Yeah.
Give them something nice to work on, a nice bone, a chew, something that they're going, okay, well, yeah, this is a nice consolation prize. They won't resent it as much, which is nice. Managing kids and dogs, if you have family members that are bringing, small kids with them, definitely chat with them about how you would like that handled. If your dog is good with little kids, if you think that if you trust the child, regardless, it is scary to have an unknown child with your dog. You just never know how that interaction is going to go. And I really recommend supervision all the time. And so chat with the owners of that child, parents or grandparents, whoever's bringing them, on how they're going to handle it. And then you decide how you're going to handle it too, whether you're going to station your dog, whether you're going to crate them, whether they're in the other room. The problem with stationing is that kids tend to go and bother the dog, and then the dog can't escape and get away. And that can be an invitation for a bite. So it's really important that kids know that if the dog is on station, the kids cannot go over and play with, talk to, pet, or otherwise interfere with the dog. In our family, when my grandkids are here, our dogs are in. We have a den that we have a baby gate with blocked off, and we have 2 baby gates. It creates kind of a moat so that the littlest kid can't reach through the bars to pet the dog. There's enough distance that they can't reach and pet the dog, because I don't want them to have food on their fingers and have a dog lick them or nibble and it turn into, the kid getting freaked out. We're just not going to do that. So for me, there's absolutely no chance the kids can interact with the dogs unless there's an adult right there with them. I just don't want to have any possible interaction that's negative. The other thing is that I want to talk to people talking about their kids. If there's a family member that is inappropriate with your dog, like they rile them up or they pet them hard, or the dog doesn't like them, it's a good time to say, hey, listen, we're working on the kids' behavior. This is how I would like the dogs to be petted. That's another way to do it. I have a friend that immediately does the ruffle the face and do the side pound, good buddy side pound, and my dog hates it, and just really hates it, and the guy doesn't listen to me. So I've had to take him aside and say, hey, Don't teach the kids to do that. And he listened. So that worked for me. And then we've talked about guests a bunch. The pro tip on this one is coordinating the guests if the guests have any issue with their dog, and so, or bringing their dog. So you want to make sure that they're not bringing their dog that is reactive or territorial, or they're that your dog and their dog gets along. This can be a big deal. People really like to bring their dogs with them to parties and to family stuff, and so have that conversation long before it's time to have the dog show up. If they bring their dog and haven't cleared it with you, really stop and talk about how you're going to set those dogs in separate spaces. It is great. Sometimes it's wonderful. The dogs go out in the yard and they tackle and they run and they have a grand old time, but then they get overstimulated, they're over aroused, and you end up with dogs that are hyper. They can bite, they can, get into a fight. They can now go tackle children. They can now go, counter serve. They turn into a little mini army. So it's not just that we're worried about the dogs having some type of negative altercation. They can also wind themselves up to be just too much. And so you really want to manage that ahead of time. And then just the 4 tips: plan ahead, supervise, provide escapes, ways for the dogs to be removed, and communicate with your family and friends so that feelings aren't hurt because you've had that conversation. I'm going to turn off my camera for a second and see if this helps. He just keeps wanting to pop up.
Well, yeah, we'll put him to work.
There we go. All right. You also have this chart in your handout, holiday food dangers. This is going to lead to the emergency information that is in your handout as well. When we talked about the bits of food, the things that people don't really think about are things like eggnog. Eggnog can be a risk for pancreatitis for dogs. It's just so rich, they can actually have a pancreatitis attack, and it makes them pretty sick. Fruitcake and holiday desserts, they can have hidden things like raisins in them, which are toxic. They often have alcohol in them, even though the alcohol itself is burned off. Some of the side, what's left over, is toxic to them. Onions and garlic, high fats, etc. Those can all be a problem. So the toxicity warnings, obviously, if you see GI upset, vomiting, diarrhea, that's the most obvious one we're going to see. But if your dog seems lethargic or seems to be panting more than the exercise level warrants, that's a pretty good sign that something might not be right. Obviously, the bigger ones of seizures and tremors, or if they're ataxic again, like they're not really coordinated, that's a get to the vet right now. And the problem is that with toxicity, there's very little time to reverse it, to get whatever's in their body out. And so that is one of those emergencies that you go fast. What's extremely important is if your dog has eaten something that they shouldn't, if you have a wrapper, take it with you so that the vet knows exactly what went in their body. If you don't, take some food with you that they ate. Take a sample with you. Document how much they ate if you can. Get an eye on how much they ate. And here's something that a lot of people try to do. I recommend you do not, and the vets do as well. Do not induce vomiting. Do not try to induce vomiting, because you can cause esophageal tears, and you can also cause stomach tears, and those are sometimes fatal. So don't force vomiting yourself. Don't do that. Let the vet deal with it. There's a new product on the market that is the activated charcoal in the small beads that the vets use. It's being confused with regular activated charcoal. Do not give your dog activated charcoal either, because that isn't the right type of charcoal the vets use, and it can also cause like tearing when they vomit it. So in this case, what you do is you get somebody on the line to the poison control center while you're on your way to the emergency room, and you talk to them as you're going. You have this too, and you can actually write in your 24-hour vet clinic number and your backup veterinarian number. There's enough space to do that. So know who you need to call and where you need to go way ahead of time. It's really hard if you're the only person that's driving your dog to the vet to be looking up where it is. And so have that information. It's here for you. Things that are medical emergencies are obviously the ones where, if your dog is out of, completely out of it, that's an emergency. But difficulty breathing, you want to look and see what color their gums are. If they're blue or white, they've got to go to the emergency room. Seizures, bleeding, vomiting, and diarrhea, if it's persistent. Inability to urinate and suspected poisoning, that's emergency room. Don't hesitate on those things. Behavioral emergencies, most people don't think of behavior as an emergency, but if you see a sudden change in behavior, most often, if it's a sudden change, it's a medical issue. And so you want to get your dog to the vet. So severe aggression, panic, a shutdown where they're not responding, if they're destructive where they hadn't been before, or they're trying to escape. Some dogs are so severely panicked, they jump through windows during fireworks. Those are emergencies. Immediately go to the vet. If they're starting to throw themselves against walls and windows. Keep this little handout handy near the fridge or wherever so you have the information. I don't know. I'm going to take a quick poll. How many of you have an emergency kit that's just for dogs? Of course, Diane. Of course, Michelle. Yeah. If you don't, all right, Kathy, good job. If you don't consider having one, you can buy them pre-made. That's why I have the picture down there. Good job, Raynell. You can get them all pre-made if you don't want to have to go through and find these things. But it's really important to have them. And it's really great to have it where you can grab it easily. Diane, where do you keep yours?
Well, I've got two. I've got one in the house. It's in the bathroom. And then I have one in my car.
Yep, same. Michelle? Where do you keep yours?
I keep one. I have two.
Mm-hmm.
I keep one in my kitchen, and we keep one. I have a unit in my garage that's on my dog stuff.
Perfect.
So I can grab that if we go in the car, but then one in the house.
Yep, perfect. So, same. I've got one that we can go, if it's an emergency, we can grab while we're grabbing all the emergency stuff in the house. And so it's right. We have it by the front door, but we can use it in kitchen or bathroom because our house is set up. It's easily to grab. And I have one in my car. And the list here doesn't really include all the stuff if you were evacuating. That's a whole different deal. But this is a nice list that you can use to go shopping for the items, or like I said, you can go online and they have them pre-packed. This is the kind of thing that you would want to, look through every year and clean out the things that have expired and put new stuff in. But it will pay off. If you have an emergency, you'll have everything you need for your dog. One thing that a lot of folks don't do that it's just vital is the identification and vet records, because in an emergency, that might be the only way you can prove that's your dog and get your dog back, or it might be the only way you can get the care you need. So having copies of records that are important, like the rabies or identification. Now, lots of folks rely on their phone for those records these days. But if you're in an emergency, you may not have access to phone. So, print out the things that are important and have it in there. Why I'm bringing this up is that if you have a dog that has an emergency during the holidays and you have one of these, you can take care of your dog pretty quickly, because if it's during the holidays, most of the places are closed. You'll have to go to an emergency room for something that may be minor. So you might be able to provide, care for a cut that you wouldn't be able to normally. So having something like this would take care of stuff that isn't truly high emergency, but you wouldn't normally be able to if you didn't have this material. Now, here's the other question. How many of you are first aid certified for animals? Yeah, Diane.
I need to recertify, but yes.
Me too, yeah. It's inexpensive, and we can do it as a group, by the way. So there are groups that will let us come in as a group and give us a discount. And so if you are interested, we can talk to Michelle and the other big leaders and see if it's something that this group would like to do. But being first aid certified is really great because they go through how to handle choking, how to help with, restarting your dog's heart if it has stopped, how to deal with major injury like a break or a big cut. And so it's worth it. And it's not, I think it was a half day when I did it. Did you do a half day?
Yeah, it was about
Yeah.
like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. I did a CPR class many years ago, and honestly, I don't think I'd remember anything of what to do if something happened to one of my dogs today. So that's a great idea to see if we can put a class together.
And with the CPR class I took, they gave us, a part of our class fee was we got a kit, a first aid kit that had all this stuff in it. So it came with that class. So that's something we can talk about if there's interest. It'd be fun to do.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're almost there, kids. What are the key takeaways? Well, I think, supervision is going to be your number one safety through the holidays. Planning ahead, training your dog and desensitizing him to the new things, communicating with your family members and making sure that they're aware of the rules with your dog or how things are going to go, getting support from this great community. If you have questions about how to do that stuff, being really aware of how your dog is handling the things that are going on throughout the holidays and offering them opportunities to decompress and de-stress. And remember, stress can look like overexcited and it can look like shut down. Stress can look like grumpy. Stress can be snappy. Stress can be naughty, where they're getting into the trash or peeing where they shouldn't. It really looks very different. So if you're seeing different behaviors than you normally do, you might want to think it's stress first than anything else. Go there first. There are lots of resources. There's some on our website that I'll forward to you. This handout is going to be great for you. But the greatest tool really is you hanging out with your dog, watching them, supervising, and just troubleshooting when you see them struggling. Everybody breathe too, because holidays are meant to be fun. Right? They're supposed to be fun. And then my quote for this one is, even the Grinch had a dog. This is how it goes. So here are the contacts. You can give us a holler, and as always, the behavior team, the medical team at GRR, you guys are amazing. And so remember to reach out to your teams here because they know what they're doing and they support you. And this is a great organization. So that's the ratata for tonight. There's